India's veteran investor and stock market guru, often referred to fondly as the big bull, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala is no more. He was admitted to Breach Candy Hospital in Mumbai, where he passed away due to a cardiac arrest at the age of 62. A net worth of over $5 billion, besides his prominent investments through well-recognized investment arm Rare Enterprises, Rakesh is also the promoter of recently listed Star Health and Allied Insurance and just cleared to fly Akasa Air, India's newest airline. Tributes are pouring in from all corners.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has tweeted, and I quote, "Rakesh Jhunjhunwala was indomitable, full of life, witty and insightful. He leaves behind an indelible contribution to the financial world. He was also very passionate about India's progress. His passing away is saddening. My condolences to his family and admirers." India Inc. veteran Uday Kotak tweets, and I quote, "Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, my school and college mate, 1 year my junior. Believe stock India was undervalued. He is right. Amazing sharp in understanding financial markets. We spoke regularly, more so during COVID. We will miss Rakesh."
I mean, it's a sad, sad day, sad, sad morning, Nigel. I mean, news coming in early this morning, right? No words really, because he was someone who is larger than life, right? I mean, actually the first and perhaps the only true rock star of stock markets. Really, democratized stock markets and stock market participation. I mean, it was almost synonymous, right? Stock markets is Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. I mean, both were indistinguishable in many ways, and just terrible news coming in this morning. He was, of course, unwell in that last interview that that he appeared on. I mean, it's actually turned out to be his last public TV appearance, which Shireen and I conducted. I mean, he, of course, was looking visibly weakened and ailing. But I mean, even then, for this to come in this morning like this, I mean, only 62, Nigel. So just, I mean, we'll of course have a lot of people join us to talk about this. I met Rakesh, Nigel, about 16 years ago, and I still remember. I mean, I don't remember the year exactly, but I do remember when I sort of met him, and it left a mark. And through the course of those last decade and a half, I mean, it's just been incredible knowing him. I mean, not that close, but of course, we all know what he stood for, what he believed in, his style of investing, which we will talk about as well. And of course, I mean, he was a very, very generous man, and those closest to him would attest to that fact very, very vigorously.
Well, extremely heartbreaking news, Prashant, to wake up to this morning. Condolences to the entire family, and all his closed ones. Gone too soon. Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, the Indian bull market, was really premised on what he said. And, he was special, be it with regard to stock market, his idols. He always said, my #1 role model is my father. Besides backing stocks, he was someone who I met as well, a couple of times in the last few years or so. And every time he left you with some bit of belief, some bit of an imprint as well. And, the stock market, the Indian economy, all of us here, it's a big, big loss to all of us. Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala.
Yeah, and I think the Prime Minister's tweet kind of captures some of the essence of what you're saying, what we're talking about here as well, in terms of just tributes coming in from, we talk a lot about investing and his investing style, but actually, if you think about it, he was also one of the first in India who got seriously rich and started giving to philanthropy in a very big way, to social causes, right?
Yes.
We have, of course, Indian corporate large groups also, but I mean, at an individual level, he was, I think, the second richest private investor in India after Radhakrishnan Damani. But I think he really kind of started giving early and in scale, which was his style, to kind of,
Yeah, that's right. In terms of philanthropy, I recall a couple of articles which mentioned that he gave a lot to nutrition, to education. St. Jude's as well, I believe, the Cancer Institute, he contributed out there as well, So, and underprivileged children, younger children as well. So besides the stock market,
Absolutely. I mean, a big believer in social causes, underprivileged children, all of that.
And Prashant, earlier today, as the news started flowing in, I spoke to a couple of people who were very close to him, and they mentioned even in the last few days or so, though his health wasn't very, was deteriorating a little bit, he replied to every message. Even 3 days ago, 4 days ago, he thanked them for their good wishes, and he said, once I'm well, we'll get back. So
that belief, that undying belief, and optimistic, right?
That's
which I think is such a big thing. And I think a lot of our viewers would identify that as well, because in moments of crises, in moments when things look very uncertain, and you can count the phases, the global financial crisis, or the COVID period, or even after that. I mean, he had that belief that things will get better, and I think that is the sort of undying message from Rakesh Jhunjhunwala to viewers and people who knew him, who did not know him, to all of us, really. Let's actually bring in some people who knew him over the years and who've interacted with him, and kind of let's talk about some of these virtues that we're talking about of Mr. Jhunjhunwala. Nilesh Shah of Envision Capital is joining us. Samir Arora of Helios Capital is with us. Shankar Sharma, market veteran, is with us. Mark Matthews of Bank Julius Baer is joining us as well. Gentlemen, good to have all of you here this morning. I mean, it's a sad day. What else can one say? Samir, but how would you remember him? Let's just start with that.
So, I knew him on and off for 25 years in the sense that, I can be called his friend, but I used to meet him maybe once or twice a year and speak to him maybe once in 6 months. But main thing is that from a market point of view, you always needed a symbol, the retail, the foreign investors who are visiting India. When I was visiting, you always need somebody to convey the big picture story. And he was a great, you can say, the ambassador for India, for Indian markets. And over the years, we discussed a few stocks, but more than that, it was always that every time you go, because he was doing longs, he was doing shorts, he was buying listed, he was buying unlisted. So there were so many things to talk about. And I remember the last time he called me, which was about a year ago, when I had come on your channel, and I was, as always, saying that I don't like commodity sector, and I don't like, I think, the auto sector, which I think he meant Tata Motor. He got upset and called me and said, Abe, and then he gave me some abuses, saying you will underperform if you don't come and understand from me why Tata Steel is a great company and Tata Motor is a great company and all that. So, all the years we have interacted, not very frequently, but every time I have learned something, and he has, at least from his side, always tried to say whatever is right, and generally been you can say, a friendly guy, and if you can't call him a friend, but definitely very, very friendly to me all his life.
Got that, Samir. He said it as it was. If you heard him on the recent con calls as well, there could be some stocks where he made, it was multi-baggers for him, but he said it as it was, put the harshest questions to the management, even the last few con calls that I attended, and, that's the way, a lot of us would remember him. But Shankar Sharma as well is joining in. Hi, Shankar. Heartbreaking news to wake up to. Tell us about your interactions with Rakesh, some learnings the last time you spoke to him as well. Go ahead, Shankar.
Yeah. So I was actually in a flight from Dubai to Bombay, and when I landed and I switched on my phone this morning at 9 a.m., the first message on WhatsApp that popped up was this. And, I'm not the kind of guy who gets moved very easily. I've seen deaths. All of us have experienced deaths in our families. But, this was something very, very, although, in all fairness, he had been ailing for a few years. One was aware of that. But even then, there is always hope against hope that things will come around. He had access to great medical help. But it was not to be. And my friendship with Rakesh goes back a long time, to the mid-90s, if I recall correctly, when we used to hang out fairly often at this bar in, I think it was Marine Plaza, called Jeffries.
Yes.
Which was a favorite watering hole for a lot of people in the financial markets after stock markets. And that time the stock markets were largely in South Bombay. So we used to hang out there, and obviously with Rakesh, you need to have a very, very strong liver to be able to match up to his capabilities. both in thinking and, of course, in drinking as well. And, it used to be quite a series of sessions. And then, of course, in the last, I think, 15 odd years, 20 years, we've been neighbors in South Bombay. And in fact, the last time I met him, physically met him, was, I think, a couple of years back at a marriage. He was ribbing me, saying that, you bastard. And of course, there is not only English, he uses a lot of Hindi words as well, which we're aware of. Ki tum sala mera view block kar raha hai. Because, where I live is exactly in front or behind, whichever way you want to look at it, from his new place. And I said, ki tum sala itna dust udhar se bhej raha hai meri taraf. I think that's your revenge, because each morning my home used to be coated with the dust from his home flying out while the construction was on. And, it was good fun. But yeah, I mean, it is beyond saddening, because, he has been, a very good friend. We have differed many times on individual stocks, but I mean, I can tell you that, I mean, in terms of his understanding of where India could be, all of us, people like Samir or myself and others, we are probably too analytical to become outright table thumping Burma bulls, which is probably a problem. But Rakesh, and as Samir correctly pointed out, he simplified things for most people, that just take a one-way bet and you'll generally be okay. And I think it worked out very well for him. I just think this is a very sad day, but I think in sadness, we should remember the good things, and we should take this as course of life. We will all depart at some point. He departs with a great legacy.
No, absolutely. I think that's so well put, Shankar. We should remember his virtues, which of course were many. I don't remember if you remember, but I do. I think it was post on a Diwali day, or it was on one of those post-budget addas at one of those hotels in South Bombay. I was there, and there were a bunch of us, Shankar, and I still remember you and Rakesh going at each other, sparring, and really heated and angry, and but even then, it was incredible to watch. I mean, he encouraged, at that point at least, different points of view. He wanted to hear, he wanted to spar, he wanted to argue.
Prashant, I liken those to the typical WWE fights. None of that is actually real. It is all make-believe. Nobody's hurting each other.
Oh, yeah. But it was very, I admired that he, there was this very vigorous debate and passionately held views, and that's what makes the market. And I think... But see, Prashant, that's the point. And I think Samir tweeted about it a few days ago, that real maturity in investing in particular comes when you can disagree with people, that you debate well with. And yet there is nothing personal about it, and you respect everybody's, each other's point of view. In fact, that's really what this business is all about. Oh, absolutely. Let's bring in others as well. Samir, I'll come back to you. Nilesh is also with us. Nilesh, how would you remember Rakesh over the years?
Well, it's really sad to kind of wake up this morning and know about this. I mean, of course, we all have been aware about his health, but I think his demise is honestly a huge dent to me personally. I think it's a huge dent to, our markets and the investment community. And I think to India as a whole, I think we will miss him. And I have now known him for more than 20 years. And I've known him since I was actually nobody. I just basically come in from Ahmedabad, and I had met him. And I think he was somebody who really, it didn't matter who you are. I think he could cut across all age groups and honestly not care about your background or nothing, as long as you were willing to listen to him or discuss with him or debate with him. And so that's how it is. And he was actually one of the very few people who influenced my thought process initially. I mean, it was, of course, 90s when people like Buffett and Peter Lynch and all of that influenced the thought process. But I think later on, it was somebody from whom I actually learned a lot. And my most memorable discussion with him was probably, this was about 20 years back, when I was just kind of beginning to be an investor. And, he just said, Nilesh, have you looked at Titan? I said, no. He just said, Lele, you and your family will remember me for life. And this was 20 years back. And to me, that's honestly been the most kind of memorable, in a way, discussion that I have had. And today we know what it is. And that small discussion, in a way, pretty much exemplifies or embodies who Rakesh Jhunjhunwala is. And for somebody to be able to simultaneously be a long-term investor as well as to be a short-term trader, I think is something which I cannot think of anybody, at least not anybody in the Indian markets, who could do both. Somebody who was long-term, who was bold, who was courageous, who had the conviction and carried through the conviction and put his money where his mouth was, whether it was essentially the bear market of 2000, 2001, where he went so long on PSUs, to the recent COVID, where he went so long on steel stocks and PSU banks and banking in general and all of that. I think it was phenomenal. So rare to come across somebody who's been so right, so successful, and yet so down to earth.
I mean, Nigel, that's a very great point Nilesh makes. I mean, so generous Nilesh, right? With sharing his ideas, sharing his insights. And I mean, I think all our panelists would agree, so many people around him have gotten so wealthy, right? I mean, because he's been so generous with his ideas, his convictions, and his beliefs that, I mean, it's just incredible. I cannot think of anyone else who's been so straightforward and so sharing with some of these ideas. There are people who guard them very closely, but he was open. I mean, you know, I've bought something, you want to buy it, go ahead, buy it. That was his nature. I mean, at least all the time that I knew him.
You know, Prashant, 10 years or so ago when I just joined CNBC TV, just, you know, a year and a half odd, and Mr. Jhunjhunwala was part of a meeting at Taj Kolaba, the top roof out there. There were various corporates, there were various stock market investors as well out there. But he broke into a dance suddenly, you know, and everything was so serious. And I was this, you know, this newly joined person. I went over there, he just said, let's continue dancing. You know, it was that 20-25 seconds odd, but for me, it melded. I mean, I was the listed stock that hit that upper circuit out there, you know, so full of life. That's a memory that I have. But let's get in Mark Matthews as well of Bank Julius Baer. Hi, Mark. Well, extremely depressing news. You know, from a global perspective, though, what did Rakesh Jhunjhunwala mean for the investor community? I mean, for us, he was the big bull. He was the stock market for a lot of us, you know, who started tracking the markets here around 15, 16 years ago. Go ahead.
Well, I think from an investment point of view, he proved that you can make a lot of money in India by picking good companies. And he had a way of staying through, all the way through. Titan is the one that most people talk about, but it's hardly the only one. So that gift of very rare and valuable gift of understanding risk and being able to measure risk, I think is one thing that was widely understood and acknowledged both in India and overseas. And his passion for the market, too, I think is something that we have to acknowledge. I remember he said markets and cooking both have to be taught. And so for him, I think the market was always interesting because it was a lifelong learning process. And certainly that passion he communicated to many other people. But to my mind, the biggest legacy he leaves is that he brought a lot of credibility to the Indian capital market. And I say that because he came from a very humble background, and simple living was his hallmark. And so he placed a lot of emphasis on integrity in corporate governance and avoided any scandals. And so, to my mind, that is the most important legacy, is really enhancing, increasing the credibility of the Indian stock market.
Oh, that's so well put, Mark. Credibility, a person who came from very humble backgrounds and rose on the basis of his own merit, his ideas, and just stock picking, right, over a very long period of time. Any anecdotes, Mark, anything? I mean, you interacted with him over the years. I mean, we remember people through stories. Anything you'd remember?
I wish I could say that, no. I think really what I remember is just a great advocate of the Indian market, great spokesperson for the Indian market, and to my mind, a person of great integrity. That's what I remember.
You know, Nigel, all of us are just kind of talking about how we remember Rakesh. Another incident, actually, it's not maybe anecdote, incident, whatever. I remember I was another one of those gatherings, and we'd just done a story, not with this organization, but the previous one. I just moved from Delhi to Bombay, and we'd done a story, and I think it was a corporate or somebody who was upset with it. I don't exactly remember which story. And the gentleman who was upset was also there, and I was also there. It so happened that we were chatting with Rakesh, and there were all three of us, and there was fourth gentleman as well. And I was being very, very respectful, and I was saying we did it and this and that. And of course, I mean, the other gentleman was upset that this is not right and that. And Rakesh basically told me, Prashant, and in Hindi, but he basically said, give it back. Why are you listening to this guy? You did your job. You were right. You're in the right. He doesn't like it. Doesn't matter. I mean, give it back. I mean, I think, it's things like that which tell you the conviction of the man, which was absolutely strong, and it kind of showed up in other areas like investing, etc. as well. Samir, just to come back to you, any other anecdotes and learnings really from him for you?
I have one very interesting anecdote. In 2007, I think he had just become a billionaire in terms of how Forbes sort of calculates it, or was about to reveal it. So he was by chance in Singapore, and he wanted to tell the 3 or 4 people who were meeting him for lunch, that either this news is about to come or whatever. So he says, I have become a billionaire. Now, all of us were fund managers. We had just started our Helios, and what are we to say? And I'm telling him, congratulations, things like that. He was so innocent in that sense, you can say, or maybe he was embarrassed or he was proud. But for a guy to come and say to a small group of 3, 4 fund managers that, I have just become a billionaire. And then I think a week or 2 weeks later, that article, the Forbes magazine list or whatever, had it. So I used to always say, what a nice guy in that sense. But I think from a market point of view, I think his biggest contribution has been that I think the retail crowd always needs some role model, some symbol, some dream, some aspiration. And you need a guy who they can say, oh, he's done it simply by investing. It's not even like, actually, even Warren Buffett has not done it simply by investing, because Warren Buffett for nearly 20 years ran a hedge fund. And so he may have had a large contribution from the fees that he may have earned, and then that compounded. For him to have done it directly and to have done it in different forms, which is that everybody knows he's buying stocks, buying futures, selling shorts, shorting stocks, buying unlisted, pre-IPOs, everything. So that, lets everybody think that she can do this, because he's not doing one line. And absolutely the best line, which you guys just discussed, is that if you see all the other very, very successful billionaire type prop investors in India, you really don't know what they own. You know it only because it comes in a disclosure form, and nobody tells you that they own it. They don't tell you why they own it. So in this case, it was much more public. But I think the saddest thing was your last interview, because after that interview, I thought that maybe only his voice is a bit weak, but he's become, sort of well enough. This interview which he gave in the launch of the Akshay Air. And after that, to see this 3 or 4 days or whatever, 5, 6 days later, that is pretty sad, more sad than what we would have thought before, that, he's sick. But this made it look that he was, confident or healthy enough to at least come back on TV. And so that makes it a little sadder.
Yeah, Samir. Let's get in Vallabh Bansali as well of Inam, who joins us on the show. Hi, Mr. Bansali. It's extremely heartbreaking news to wake up to, this morning. But wanted you to share, about your interactions with Mr. Jhunjhunwala. Maybe something you've learned, some takeaway from the last interaction you had with him.
So I've known Rakesh for more than 35 years, his family for 40 years. And I remember first time we went out together to explore an investment to Goa. It was Sesa Goa. And we spent 2 intense days. And then, of course, the regular part of, a group that my brother led in our office. And so multiple interactions. But Rakesh, to me, while his passion, intelligence, his boldness and his candidness were unique to him, but a few things that he left behind are something that we can all learn from, and we must, as a recognition of his immense contribution to the markets and the country. And those two things to me are that we all tend to be so nuanced. And when the resistance, understanding is dense, that, when equity culture was, many of us played our role in promoting that. But Rakesh was so bold, so confident. So I think to lift the masses, you need a Pied Piper like Rakesh, and he was that Pied Piper. And the second thing was that his immense faith in India, concern for India, readiness to do anything for India, which is, again, something that we can all learn and get inspired from. Of course, his unique qualities have all been talked of, and most, on top of the list is his frankness, whether it was his own mistakes, his own positions, his desire that all around him be successful, and how he went out of his way to help his family, friends, anyone he met, he wanted them to be successful. So, he truly had a very, very large heart, and he gave voice to it. It's a very, very big loss for the market and the country.
Mr. Bhansali, a truly, truly generous man, right? As you put it, with a very large heart. Sharing his ideas, wealth, and of course knowledge with people he knew closely and those he did not know closely. That's a rare trait, right?
Absolutely. People hold their opinions, their positions so close to their heart. But he was an open book. He would speak his mind to anyone. We know we were very close as families and spent many days and events together on number without count occasions. But, he met somebody and he wanted to do something for them. तू इसकी से शादी करा दे, तू इसको यहाँ भेज दे, इसको ये पढ़ा दे, इसके तू वहाँ तक को जाना ही चाहिए. And the authority with which he would say all these things, of course, he was doing so many things for so many people and he wouldn't be able to follow up. But if you followed up, you could count on him to go all the way.
Well, Mr. Bhansali, always recall him saying the mother of all bull markets is yet to come. And India will overtake, all the other emerging markets like China, in the coming few years as well. But that was from a stock market perspective. What about, a couple of other incidents that you could relate to us with regard to Rakesh? Because you know him personally, as you said, for more than 3 decades or so.
So I think the way his love for Rekha, and I think since morning, person very much in my mind is Rekha, his wife. I have seen very few people of her character. And the ever smiling, ever sacrificing, ever concerned and supporting Rekha. I think a large part of, who Rakesh was and was able to do comes from his wife, who looked after herself, looked after him, gave him children, and through, his very peculiar habits, lifestyle, stood by his side, rock is probably an understatement. So my mind is full of it, and his love for her. How generous he was always in saying that, it is Rekha all the way. So, it's a very emotional moment for us, all those who were very close to him and for years together. A number of instances in the market, in personal life, and, beyond the point, he did not like advice on his personal traits and all. He lived life king size, and people who were close to him, senior to him, we knew that there is no use, because many times all that sermonizing, he felt hurt about it. He said, "Yeah, मालूम तो है मुझे भी, लेकिन मेरे से होता नहीं है." So it's a very sad moment, but what is left behind, and one has to all. My heart is full of Rekha today and his children.
The heart goes out to the kids and of course Rekha ji as well. Mr. Bhansali, did you happen to meet him over the last many weeks when he was taken in ill I mean, any interaction? How was he feeling about his own health? I mean, anything you can tell us?
No, I think he was such an optimistic person, and all the doctors were so fond of him because his childlike, character, and his desire to do good things for the doctors, nurses, hospital. So it was so easy to, just fall in love with the man. But they all felt frustrated that, look, we just wish that Rakesh took better care of his health. But he remained optimistic, ठीक है यार हो जाएगा अभी 2 दिन में 4 दिन में 5 दिन में 7 दिन में and I mean he smiled, laughed, joked so easily in all circumstances. Extraordinary person.
Mr. Bhansali, I know maybe it's not the right time, but he also leaves behind, of course, a very large, one of the largest, greatest investment portfolios created, right? In maybe a generation, 2 generations. In your interactions, how was he thinking about that in terms of shepherding that portfolio? Overseeing that, because his health had been frail, at least for the last 6-7 months.
See, if you are essentially a risk-taker person, you can't keep away from risk. So, you would, he loved the market, he loved the trade, he loved the risk. And that's what he essentially was. And if you're a trapeze artist, you are doing new tricks all the time. You can't get scared, whatever it is. So he built a portfolio which was incidental to his life and philosophy. And I don't think he was enamored of wealth for the sake of it, because he was so giving, so loving. And I think his intelligence and his desire to test his intelligence and ideas, that was what his life was. So at least I do not, in my interactions, I did not find that he was so strategic about it, कि मुझे ये करना है, ये percentage करना है. So he loved his companies, he loved building companies. People, those who worked in his companies and got close to him, how much he loved them, he treated them as family. And so his approach to money and his investment was one where life and human relations and patriotism, they were much larger in his mind than the result. Of course, the thrill of the result that, ये trade right आ गया, ये deal right आ गई was there. But he was ready to take a bigger risk the next time. So it was not to protect and save as much as to build and try.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Bhansali, for joining in and giving us, your insights in terms of interactions with Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. Appreciate you joining in. Well, for the time being, though, we'll slip into a short break. You come back, we'll keep getting your reactions, and we'll get you market experts as well, who will be sharing their interactions with Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. You stay with us.
Welcome back. I mean, it's a sad day. Of course, this morning news coming in that veteran investor, the big bull, the rock star of stock markets in India, the only one and truly rock star of stock markets in India, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, is no more. He passed away due to a cardiac arrest early in the morning. Of course, he's the last rites will be performed later in the evening today. We've been, of course, getting a stream of tributes from people who knew him, both, of course, his friends in stock markets, but also, of course, corporates as well who knew him, companies that he invested in, and we've been getting those to you. We were talking about how Rakesh, of course, and Vallabh Bansali was with us earlier, and he said he was the Pied Piper for retail investors, for investors broadly. I just want to put out this quote, and this is, I picked this up from Twitter. This is coming in from Anand Sridharan, who's, of course, a senior investment professional at Nalanda Capital. This sort of puts it so well. Rakeshji's, and I quote, Rakeshji's effect was that lesser mortals and markets derived our strength from him. In scary markets, his optimism, clarity, conviction, audacity, and even style of putting cynics in their place was enormously reassuring. We felt safer standing behind him. We'll miss you, sir. And I think, Nigel, that is so well put.
Well, through that, Prashant, Prashant, another important thing that from the interactions that I've seen on the channel itself with Rakesh is about his role models. As I mentioned, his dad, he says that his thoughts, his guts, etc., came in from his dad. I think his dad was involved in the income tax. Rakesh was a very, very sharp chartered accountant. Second role model, he said, was the House of Tatas. Besides, the other people that he admired were Winston Churchill for tenacity, sheer guts. From the stock market perspective, George Soros, internationally, and in India, he said
Radhakrishan Damani.
Radhakrishan Damani.
I mean, there's a famous story, Nigel, that every Diwali he would touch, Radhakrishan Damani's feet, and he never forgot it. That the outsized influence that Mr. Damani had on him.
Right.
So I think incredible. Never forgot where he came from. Talked about it proudly.
Yes.
And I think Mark Matthews made that point, which you alluded to as well. I mean, self-made and completely no stain of any wrongdoing or anything, right?
Yes.
I mean, so in that sense, a role model for everyone out there as well, that you can do this in a very clean way in markets without sort of absolutely on the right side of corporate governance, etc., etc. So I think that's a hugely important point.
And when he always mentioned Mr. Radhakrishan Damani, he said for investment and wisdom, he's the man that I admire. For trading, George Soros maybe. But we're getting a lot of reactions as well that are coming in. And Sunil Singhania of Abacus Asset Management joins us. Sunil, a very, very sad day for all of us, for the stock markets, for the economy as well. You would have interacted with Mr. Jhunjhunwala numerous times in your career. Give us, your remembrance, your couple of interactions, what you would have learned from him.
No, it is indeed a very sad day. I think Rakesh Bhaiya was one person who was liked by one and all. And that clearly, comes out of his, willingness to be always there, not only as a teacher, as a guide, as an elder brother, and that's the reason he was known as Bhaiya. But as a great sort of, human being with absolute clarity. And particularly, equity markets are always full of challenges. But, this was one person who in all adversities came out and gave that encouragement and guidance to everyone who was even remotely connected with the Indian economy and equity markets, that India is the place to invest from a longer term perspective. So, it's indeed a sad day, but I would say that his personality was such that he will always be with us every single day. And, I think the biggest, or the most we can do for our elder brother is to not forget his optimism on the Indian economy and the Indian equity markets.
I mean, a force to reckon with, Sunil, right? I mean, during the depths of any crises, he was a rock you could always depend on, look to, and he would project that optimism, which was infectious.
So, Prashant, what happens is obviously in times of challenges and adversity, there is fear which takes over investors and traders. And at that point of time, you need someone to give you that courage to overcome that fear. And I think that was the biggest, I would say, virtue of Rakesh Bhaiya. In every adversity, he came out and said that don't be scared. As long as you're not overstressed in terms of your finances, I think markets will bounce back. Indian economy is strong, and I think that has helped millions and millions of investors get into the habit of regularly investing in equity markets. But aside from investing and aside from making a lot of wealth for everyone, I think he stood out as one who was very modest, very down to earth, and anyone who remotely also, prides of being rich, I think we should look up to Rakesh Bhaiya and immediately come down on earth. Such was his humility, and I think a lot of things to learn.
Yes.
And I'm very sure that when we introspect, I think these learnings will only get stronger and stronger for each one of us.
Sunil, we were talking earlier how he, as a sort of someone who came up and made all his wealth through investing, as a private individual, was one of the earliest to start giving to philanthropy as well in a big way, right? I mean, he talked about it openly, and that also spread through. I mean, I'm assuming encouraged so many others to go down that road. I mean, that is also, a huge contribution. I mean, his support for social causes, he believed in underprivileged kids and so many others.
It is, Prashant, and specifically for first generation, guys who create wealth, philanthropy normally comes a little bit late because, you're so engrossed in your business or profession, that fire of making it big because, you have always aspired to do it so high that you forget that ultimately, kya leke aaye the, kya leke jayenge kind of a thing, And because, you're looking up to your role model, it always encourages to sort of follow them in your own small way, So I would say that this whole philanthropy thing has also been an inspiration for a lot of others to do their small bit in their own way. And, ultimately, all of us have got what we have got by because we have been in this great country at the right time. And it is upon all of us to do our bit before, we follow the natural process of life and death.
Sunil, you have clearly spelled out that Rakesh was, role model. He was a support system. He backed up a lot of investors as well. But any instance that, you could narrate to us, whether it was with investing or personally as well, a couple of things stand out about Rakesh is he had that investment in Titan in early 2000s. It was a multi-hundred bagger for him, but he still held on. He still, last disclosed close around 5% in the company. Anything that you could relate to or you could share with
Nigel,
us?
I think there are a lot of things to learn. And as I said, when someone is right there, you don't realize. And then when you start to introspect, you remember each and every sentence, and you really figure out the importance of each sentence, So one is he was the one who taught us, frankly, to be positive in all adversities. And, we have seen last 20-25 years, the country and the economy grow through ups and downs. But he was one gentleman who basically always said that as long as India continues to grow, there's a lot of wealth to be made. So that was one thing which, at least I have followed all my life, that be positive. These challenges are transition. The other thing is he was always a learner. In equity markets particularly, successful investors sometimes tend to get into that frame of mind where they believe that they know all. I think this was one investor who, despite being the most successful, always used to be open to calling, reaching out himself, and trying to understand from other investors also, and learn from other investors. And I think that is again something which is worth learning for all budding investors, that you can never be a master in this equity market. So you have to learn. Every investor has something to offer. But more importantly, Nigel, all these are all, professional sort of characteristics and virtues. But as a human being, he used to always say that, be bold. As long as you have your own house, your own office, and maybe 2-3 lakhs a month for your family expenses, be bold in trying to do whatever you have set out to do. And I think he was one big inspiration for me also to start my entrepreneurial journey. So words are not enough. He was definitely an elder brother to hundreds of us, and a lot of things in our career has been contributed because of Bhaiya. Some we realize, some we will realize maybe a little later, but there is absolutely no doubt that Indian equity markets, I would say one of the biggest contribution to Indian equity markets has been because of Rakesh Bhaiya.
Well, so beautifully put, Sunil, and kind of captures so much. Thank you so much, Sunil, for joining us with that. Thank you indeed for sharing that with us. Navneet Munot is with us, Managing Director and CEO at HDFC AMC. Navneet, of course, is also someone who's known Mr. Jhunjhunwala for a long time. Navneet, thank you for joining us. It's a sad day, but I mean, we can remember his virtues, which were many, and we've been sort of getting people to do that. How would you remember Rakeshji, Navneet?
Prashant, it's indeed a sad day. I think Rakeshji, the legendary investor, passing away at this age is indeed very saddening. And first of all, my sincere condolences to his family and friends. May his soul rest in peace. His investing acumen, his worldly wisdom, his witty style, I mean, all of these are very, very well known. What stands out about him would also be his huge optimism on India's story, as well as his fearlessness of speaking his mind. I mean, he never shied away from speaking his mind and heart. He would be remembered for his courage, his conviction, his boldness, his optimism, his energy, and tenacity.
Okay. Navneet, the other thing which I think which someone earlier pointed out, that he's someone who symbolizes the fact that you can make a great sort of investment portfolio worth. I mean, he became very, very seriously rich, one of the richest private individuals in the country, investors, of course, in the country. I mean, actually, the richest private individual investor in the country. And he did it from just investing, right? I mean, that is incredible as an accomplishment, and he did it the right way, no real scandals, anything along the way, the 30, 40 years that he's been investing.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a great story how a person with a humble beginning, starting with a small amount in an economy like India, could went on to create what he has created over the years is really an outstanding story. I was listening to Vallabhji and what he said, that he was a Pied Piper for millions of investors. And people like him are the ones who have given this faith to billions of investors that India has a lot of potential and a wealth can be created through investing. As a market participant, one may have views on markets going up or going down as driven by a variety of factors. But the view that he kept steadfastly throughout his life was his deep belief and conviction in India, its entrepreneurs, its people, and its long-term potential.
Well, yeah, that's right, Navneet. In every interview, you always said that believe in the India story. It's there for you to invest in, participate in this story, and make a lot of money as well. Well, that was what the big bull had to say. But Navneet, before we let you go, your final closing comments then, maybe a couple of interactions that you had a few years with him, or, anything that, any specific instance that you'd like to narrate to us before we let you go.
So most of my interactions were at industry event or media event or social events or a roundtable or a panel that we may have shared. And I remember a little over a year ago where a couple of people from capital markets interacting with some policymakers. And this was a time when the economy was impacted by the second wave and most of the people had some bit of pessimistic view. And then to even at the dismay of others, he just raised his voice and kind of silenced everyone by selling, and I remember, sell your family gold and buy India. No point debating trivial things. This decade belongs to us. So, and I remember he was on a wheelchair, not in the best of health, but his enthusiasm, his energy was absolutely palpable, and he had deep faith that I think the decade belongs to us.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he, of course, was proven right, as he was so many times in his long and storied career. Navneet, thank you very much for sharing all of that with us, with our viewers. Deeply appreciated. Well, you know, tributes will continue to pour in. It's the passing of an iconic figure for India's capital markets, perhaps the biggest and most well-known that there ever has been, at least in India. We'll, of course, continue to get you all of that. That's curtains down for now on this show. Here's leaving our viewers with excerpts from our last interview with the Big Bull and what he made of the India growth story. Thanks for staying with us.
And I must, thank Mr. Mukesh Ambani for the change he has brought about in India, because, the low cost of the communication, whether in voice or in data, is what has caused digitalization in this country. And we cannot thank Mr. Ambani more for the beautiful, for the low cost he has brought to digitalization and, to either voice and communication both. Those who can borrow are those who can lend. And they have great, public sector banks have great gathering, great power of gathering deposits. I'm very bullish on the hospital space also. Public sector banks and hospitals. I don't think it's a very good sector to invest, because it constantly requires investment. The valuations are such that there is more downside risk than upside opportunity. I feel very confident, comfortable, and I feel Akasa will be a very competitive airline. We are not a low-cost airline, we are a frugal airline. I think they will grow at between 10 to 15%, I think, for the next 5 years, or I think for eternal time. The growth in IT services is not going to stop regardless of recession in the world. I think India is going to enter a golden period. I see India growing at 10%. We are entering a golden age. I wish my fellow Indians were as optimistic as I am.